Okay, I want to talk a little bit about posture, what a lot of people think it is, something called upper and lower cross syndrome that affects the shoulders and hips, and breathing and, posture. Some people think posture is important, others don't necessarily think so. My personal background, I was lifting weights in my 20s and my shoulders are kind of rounded forward like this, had a little too much curve in my thoracic spine, my mid and upper back, didn't really know it, and I ended up hurting my shoulder, and in my opinion, posture definitely played a role in that. But just talking on posture, I'll start with upper cross syndrome. So upper cross syndrome is something comes from Dr. Vladimir Yanda, who was a physician in the Czech Republic. He's now passed away. But basically, he coined the terms upper cross and lower cross syndrome. And so what we typically think of in those cases are somebody whose shoulders a little bit rounded forward like this. Maybe their mid-spine is a little bit more rounded than normal, or head typically is a little bit forward. And there are varying degrees of this, obviously, but this is what's considered, what he considered upper cross syndrome. And so his reasoning behind this, okay, the muscles in front of the body here like this are tight, so we got to stretch the muscles in the front of the body to open up, and then strengthen the muscles in back, kind of the back of the shoulders and between the shoulder blades, strengthen these muscles to balance out the muscles on the front of the body. And simplistic, but that's kind of the overview of upper cross syndrome. And like I say, I think I think it has a lot of merit, but everybody doesn't necessarily think so. Another group called the Postural Restoration Institute, which is a continuing education group, made up some physical therapists. They look at the body we consider, we consider posture usually standing straight upright, like I'm trying to do right now. But sometimes we also think of, okay, is there any twist side to side? If there's a line going through my body, my balance left to right, my hips, etc. Their opinion, Postural Restoration Institute, PRI, because of our internal organs are offset, meaning they're not all balanced inside, that has an effect on how things sit, and your hips and pelvis are going to be slightly off because of that. There again, I haven't really studied anything with them, but I'm familiar with their principles. A lot of what they say makes sense, and they're also big proponents of breathing, specifically a diaphragmatic breathing. Your diaphragm kind of runs here just below your heart, etc., heart and lungs, and goes down here and kind of expands all around here when you breathe, ideally. And diaphragm is your primary breathing muscle, and people who don't breathe well typically breathe more. And that's okay if you just got done running a 100-meter race or something really exhaustive, something like that. But if that's the way you normally breathe, not ideal, not great for posture. But let's go back to Dr. Yanda. The other term that he coined, lower cross syndrome, was looking at the hips and pelvis. So if people with lower cross syndrome often have kind of a lower back curve here, their bodies would be forward, the hips in front would be tight, the glutes and hamstrings would be stretched and often weak. So the thought process behind that, stretch these muscles in front, your hip flexors, and your quads. Strengthen your glutes and hamstrings, so you've got more of a neutral, kind of the pelvic tilt versus like this. And the opposite of that is sometimes you may see somebody like this, where they're really got a posterior pelvic tilt, where I'm tucked, my glutes butt is tucked under. And that's kind of the extreme. But anyway, just the idea that there's a balance between front to back, and your posture is better. But obviously, you know, if my posture is better here, it's probably going to affect up here as well. But like I say, breathing plays a role in that. But my personal story, I kind of came, you know, with the idea, okay, I had some postural issues, I was too far rounded, so I spent a lot of time on the ground like this, up on my elbows, just like this, just trying to stretch the muscles of my back. Actually, more stretching the muscles through the front in order to get more, you know, curve through the back, more of a proper curve, you know. But there again, same principles, you know, just trying to stretch the muscles that are tight. And that position definitely helped with my posture. But for me personally, what I've found to be the best is something called the Be-Activated technique, which I took almost 6 years ago, and also in its kind of sister course, which is RPR, Reflex Performance Reset. But basically, they're based on the same principles of, you know, getting the muscles of your diaphragm, your hip flexors, hip flexion, hip extensors, glutes, getting those muscles balanced first and getting your breathing working properly, so then the muscles above and below that point are going to work more optimally. That's kind of the principles of the Be-Activated and RPR, which I'll go into here in a second. But you know, like I say, what posture isn't, in my opinion, is telling somebody to stand up straight, because most people who aren't standing up straight according to what we think is straight don't know that they're not standing up straight, and or they may have had some issues. You know, maybe I've worked with a couple older people in rehab settings. They're told, you know, they're trying to tell them stand up straight. Well, their neurological system wasn't working well. They had no idea what straight was. So telling somebody to stand up straight, you know, isn't ideal. But I'm standing here, in my opinion, fairly straight right now. I'm not working any of my muscles. I'm pretty much relaxed, and that's the idea, that if you're in good posture, what we think is good posture, you shouldn't have to contract muscles to hold there. It should be reflexive. It just, things are working automatically, and I'm in the right position. Getting back to the Be-Activated technique, the rest RPR, like I say, they're going to start with the diaphragm, your diaphragm underneath here, as well as hip flexors. In front, they attach your hips, and they run onto the inside of your pelvis, and the psoas actually attaches to your lumbar vertebra. So there again, it's an important stabilizer for the lower back as well as the hip. And your glutes, obviously your glutes push straight back. So if you're running, jumping, anything, doing powerful movements, your glutes, you need them to work properly. Okay, so the idea behind the RPR, getting back to that, they're going to stimulate reflex points to get the muscles to work better, and they refer to those as Neuro lymphatic reflexes. So the first one for the diaphragm, I'm going to go here to my rib cage, and I'm just going to kind of rub up and down kind of the length of my rib cage, in the front there, my sternum, in the middle, and fairly vigorously for about 20 seconds. And like I say, I kind of hit all these points here in the middle, top to bottom, and just kind of right there where the ribs attach, just like that. Like I say, about 20 seconds. Okay, now I'm going to go to the edge, the angles of my rib cage here, and I'm going to stimulate those angles where I've got muscular and fascial connections there. And I'm going to stimulate those points, rub those points there again, about 20 seconds. And there again, they can be you can be fairly aggressive here if you need to. Once you've done this enough times, it's like you don't necessarily have to go as much force, but if your diaphragm isn't working ideally, optimally, may need a little bit of force just to kind of get your body to, you know, get the signal correctly. Okay, so there again, your angle of your rib cage running here, and that's associated with your diaphragm. So from there, to work my diaphragm, I would immediately go into diaphragmatic breathing, and you can do that lying or standing. And once you've done this a few times, you can do it optimally standing, no problem. So my breathing is happening below the chest. So my rib cage from here down, that's where I should be doing the majority of my breathing if my diaphragm is working optimally. And if your diaphragm isn't optimally, it may be easiest to go ahead and lay down on the floor just to get it working a little better. So in that case, I'm gonna take a deep inhale, anywhere from 3 to 5 seconds. And then this is the case, I'm going to go ahead and try to blow it all out. I'm going to take as long as I can, try to blow out as much air just to get the diaphragm, those inner core muscles working a little better. So there again, I'm going to deep inhale through my nose. So that inhale, I can feel my rib cage, even my chest also rising and expanding. And then as that deep exhale, I feel everything sucking back in. And so that's kind of getting that diaphragm, those inner core muscles just working a little bit better. So there again, you can take 5 to 10 of those breaths. So I've got my mouth just slightly open just to give myself a little bit of resistance versus having my mouth all the way open. So just a slight amount of opening with my mouth there, just to try to blow as much air out and keeping pressure in through there. But like I say, once you've done that a few times, you don't necessarily have to do that while laying on the floor. Basically, you just stand up, and you may even, there again, some people talk about 360 breathing all down here through the lower portion of the rib cage. So you can just stand with your hands on the sides of your ribs here, on your sides, and just so you can see that expansion through here, and you are going to get some expansion through the chest because you do breathe up through here, but primarily it should be from here down, from here up is assisting. So there again, the more you're breathing down here, the more your diaphragm is going to work better. And if your diaphragm's working better, you get your hip flexors and glutes corrected. I'm standing up perfectly straight here, zero effort. So, okay, now I'm going to show you point for the psoas. Again, your psoas muscle is one of your hip flexors, kind of attaches down here, runs up at an angle here, and attaches to your spine. So all 5 of your lumbar vertebrae, and also attaches fascially with your diaphragm, so it's kind of connected to your diaphragm in a matter of speaking. Okay, so I'm going to go to my belly button here, and I'm going to go over an inch or 2, and then down an inch or so, and basically I'm going to push in while I rub those points. And they may be a little sore, and that's okay. If they're sore, then that means, probably needs to be worked. But there again, I'm not actually touching my psoas muscles here because they're obviously a lot deeper inside. But I'm stimulating the fascia. There again, your fascia, your connective tissue, attaches and holds everything together. It can signal So you can send a lot of signals to other parts of the body. So there's a lot of nerve endings in your fascia, your connective tissue, that sends signals elsewhere. So that's what you're sending a signal that's going to affect that psoas. Then the points from my glutes may seem strange because your glutes back here. I'm going to hit the points on the back of my head, just under my skull here, and also behind the ear. So I'm going to start here, base of the skull. I'm going to push some pressure, and I'm just going to rub those points 10-15 seconds, and then I'm going to just move out just a little bit, hitting the muscles on the back of the skull there, hitting where the neck attaches. Back there, do that. Let's say all total about 20 seconds. Now, I'm going to go just below the ear on either side, on the back side of the jaw as well as the neck. And I'm just going to rub those points there for about 20 seconds. So I'm stimulating the back of the jaw and the neck at the same time. So some people will tell you that your vagus nerve runs right through that area, and you're stimulating your vagus nerve. And I'll let you look that up to see the significance of your vagus nerve if you want. But the idea is to help put you into what's called a parasympathetic state. Parasympathetic versus sympathetic. Sympathetic is fight or flight, which everybody has probably heard of, the fight or flight, that you're ready to go, you're in defense mode, or you're running or whatever. And parasympathetic is kind of the opposite of that, more of a kind of rest and digest. But I'll stimulate these points for about 10 seconds here, and then maybe come just underneath the jaw here, just to there again. If there's any excess tension, just release there so that my breathing is easier. But right now, just what I did, hitting those different points, diaphragm, psoas, and glutes, I feel a lot more relaxed. I feel upright without any effort. That's the whole point. If you believe in good posture, it should happen without effort, should happen without, a lot of conscious thought at all, more reflexive. But anyway, that's posture, breathing, upper and lower cross, and RPR, be activated technique, and I think it works. So like I say, I have, it's not everything, but it's your foundation. If you don't have good posture, in my opinion, everything's not going to work as optimally. Like I say, just reaching up overhead.